there is the latest homework that's posted is 4B. 4B is a couple of problems on paired samples, the paired samples and independent sample t-tests. Okay, before the exam we did single sample t-tests, then we took the exam, then we did independent samples t-tests. In other words, two groups being compared. First one was a group, one sample being compared to a known mean for another group. Then we took a look at paired two sample t-tests, independent sample t-tests. Tonight, we're going to branch off from that, and that's homework 4B is what that covers. Tonight, we're going to cover very quickly one topic that we're going to put off mainly to next week. But I think you need to look at it, because as you decide on what your project's going to be, as you start playing with your data and stuff like that, you may need this functionality. So that's called analysis of variance. Analysis of variance is really a way for you to compare more than two means at the same time. So if I got two means, I'm comparing boys to girls, right? The average BMI of boys to girls, right? I have two samples, one for boys, one from girls. So that's t-tests involving two samples that I'm going to compare the means of. Now, what about if I asked you to compare the means, the mean performance on a standardized exam for 5 different elementary schools, right? So you got a mean for school A, a mean for school B, a mean for school C, a mean for school D, a mean for school E. Problem with that is that we do have a tool to do that. We got a t-test, right? But you can only compare two means at a time with a t-test. So that would mean you would have to compare the mean of school A to the mean of school B. T-test will do that for you, no problem. The mean of school A to the mean of school C, A to D, A to E. Oh, okay, now you have another problem. What about B and C? You got to compare B and C, so you got to run another t-test. Pretty soon you're running 5 times 4 times 3 times 2 t-tests. You're running like 60 different t-tests, maybe. Okay, so you're running a number of t-tests, right? Problem with that is that each chance of being wrong when you're rejecting a hypothesis for a t-test, if you use alpha is equal to 0.05, is potentially 5%. So if you keep doing it over and over again, you almost ensure that you're going to wind up rejecting a null hypothesis in one of those cases when you shouldn't. So we need a tool that'll let us compare the means of more than two groups at a time. And that's something called analysis of variance. I'm going to give you a quick look at that in a second. But you're going to need that because let's say the data that you're going to be working with is numerical data. You need to find the averages, but it's more than two groups. Only two groups, say insured or uninsured. Well, okay, let's say you're looking at the income level, people who are insured or uninsured. That's okay, income level. You can find the average income level for the group of people that's insured and for the group of people that are uninsured. So simple t-test. Well, what if there's more than two categories there in insured? Insured, Medicare, private insurance, Medicaid, government health insurance, so on and so forth. This is more than those categories. Well, now you have more means that you have to compare. This is the tool that you would use to do that. So you could do all of those comparisons in one shot. Okay, that's called analysis of variance. Doesn't seem like it makes sense from the name of it. The other tool we're going to take a look at tonight, and then we're going to work on analysis of variance very briefly, because I'm actually flipping things around, because given the data set we've given you, there's other tests that are even more valuable to you. There's one called chi-square and odds ratio. It's really kind of a double test, odds ratio and relative risk. We'll talk about it. You've probably heard that mentioned in studies and stuff like that. But we're going to look at chi-square, odds ratio, relative risk. They were kind of one type of test, or we put together, they're one type of test. We're going to really concentrate mostly on that tonight, and the analysis of variance I just told you about, comparing means, next week, because I want you to get a look at that stuff for chi-square, odds ratio, and relative risk. Anybody know why I'm so interested in covering odds ratio and chi-square tonight? Because it doesn't work with numerical variables, right? You're not comparing means. What kind of data does it work with? It works with categorical variables. In other words, let's say you wanted to know, you had a survey, and you have people that are insured or uninsured, and you have people that had treatment for, in the last year were treated for diabetes. and you want to know, hey, if you have insurance, then you're more likely to be treated for diabetes than someone that's uninsured. So you have a yes, no for diabetes, and you have a yes and no for insurance. So that's a 2x2 table, right? That is two categorical variables that you're looking for an association with. There's a lot of the data that we've given you as potentially stuff you might want to use for your project is categorical data. So we're going to want to know how to do that test. So we're going to spend more time on it. We're going to spend a little time on analysis of variance, but most of our time on chi-square and odds ratio and relative risk, okay, tonight. But I want to expose you to analysis of variance. Analysis of variance we're going to cover next week. Okay, how are we going to cover it next week? We're going to cover it online next week because I'm going to be on a boat in Alaska next week, so I won't be here, right? So we're going to have that class online. The class, I'm going to post videos for the lab and the lecture, right? But if I have a good internet connection at the time that we would normally have class, I'll try and do maybe half an hour online live if it's possible, right? I can't guarantee it because, I don't know if you guys have ever taken a cruise or something like that. They have Wi-Fi, but there's 4,000 people using the Wi-Fi at the same time, especially during, prime time and stuff like that, and during the daytime or during the evening. So it doesn't always work that well, right? But I can certainly put up videos and stuff that you can go through. That would be what I would be saying anyway, right? But if possible, I'm going to see if I can't do a little bit of it live as well. Okay, so we're going to concentrate on analysis of variance next week. Just a little taste of it tonight. So, okay, so we have that. We know that we're going to use these tools along with t-tests for our project. We're also going to use the tools that we know about for descriptive statistics, finding making up pie charts or bar charts, finding the means, making up tables, and so on and so forth. We're going to use that for a description to describe our population or our data. We're going to use the output from SPSS or Excel to tell us about to examine these variables and tell us what we can say about them, what we can prove, if there is an association or if there isn't an association between different variables. So I'm going to play around. At the end of the session, I'm actually going to play around with a couple of analyses that might be the kind of thing that you would be likely to do for a project. So I'm going to ask you guys to, and I don't know what I put down as a date, but in the next week or so, to make sure that you've decided on a potential project. Tell me what your objective is, tell me what variables you plan on using, and tell me what tests you plan on applying. If you tell me those three things, I can prevent you from painting yourself into a corner. So like in other words, if you tell me, well, I want to show an association between influenza vaccine and whether a person is insured or not, or influenza vaccine and whether a person is elderly, or whether a person is diabetic. I want to show an association between those two things. And these are the two variables in this data set I'm going to use. And the two variables are this and this. One is, they're both categorical variables. One is categorical, one is numerical, and so on and so forth. You can tell me that. And then tell me what test you plan on applying. Well, if it's numerical and categorical, if it's two groups, you're going to tell me t-test. If it's more than two groups in the categorical variable, then you're going to tell me analysis of variance. And if it's both the categorical variables, like diabetic, yes or no, and I got an influenza vaccine, yes or no, right? Two categorical variables, you're going to tell me, oh, they're both, these two variables are categorical, both categorical. I'm going to use chi-square and odds ratio, right? So that'll save you the misery of choosing the wrong test and have to go back over it again, maybe working with variables that don't work that well and so on. So if I get just a peek at that, what do you plan on doing? Then I can give you just a little bit of feedback to tell you, go for it. Or I think there's a minefield there somewhere. Okay, so I can warn you of that. So that's really, it's ungraded. In other words, just kind of like, just let me know. I think I posted a spot where you can upload that, and you can check that for me now. As a matter of fact, I think I put it up there. And then your project itself on the last day of the class. Unfortunately, our last day goes into the last week. It's 21st on the last day. My wife's birthday. She's not pleased, right? So May 21st is our last day of class. On the last day of class, we're all going to come in here, and each one of us will print out our poster pages tack them up to a poster board, and we're going to, you're going to have 3 minutes or so, 3 to 5 minutes to present your paper, explain it to us and what your objective was, what you found, what data sets you used, what test you applied, what your result was, what your conclusion is, right? Very quick, nothing fancy. And for the most part, you're not really being graded on your presentation, so don't worry if you're uncomfortable, if you have a language issue and you're uncomfortable with, or you're just nervous about speaking. Don't worry about it. You're not going to be judged on that. But I think it's important that you at least give it an effort to communicate that with the rest of us and give us a chance to give you some feedback on it as well. What you'll be graded on is what you actually upload to Blackboard in the way of your project. Okay, so that's that. There'll be at least 2 more homeworks, probably one on analysis of variance, one on chi-square and relative risk. We're also at the very end, somewhere in here, maybe even just on video, I want to cover at least an introduction to something called regression. Don't worry about that for right now. If somebody comes up with a project where it may be applicable, I'll cover something on it, perhaps online or something like that. Maybe I'll put something up next week. Any questions so far? I did post I'm sorry.
Oh, no, I was going to say, there's no
The object, like in other words, your summary. Okay, then I put out there's a place to post your project, though, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I'll make sure it's up there. Yes. And we're not going to. That's the final. Is our project. Okay, we have exam 1, exam 2, and the project. I posted a makeup exam for exam 2. Okay. If you decide to take that makeup exam, you take it online. If you decide to take that makeup exam, I will average the grade you make in the makeup exam with your first exam. So why would you want to do that? If you miss the first exam, you got no choice. You got to do it, right? A second exam, you got to do it. If you didn't miss this second exam, but you stumbled on the second exam, and you're really unsatisfied with your score, you can give it a try again. Like I said, you'll have the opportunity to improve your score a bit. You get 2 tries at the makeup exam. Since it's online, a lot of bad things can happen online when I can't fix while you're working on it, so you get 2 shots at it. After you complete it the first time, you'll be able to see which problems you got wrong, but it will not give you the answer, right? So you get to do it a second time and get another shot at it, right? So so I won't show you the answers, tell you which ones you got wrong, but you'll have to figure out how to correct yourself on that. So if you want to do it, if you got a good score on the first exam, I wouldn't bother with it. But yes.
So you're not going to average it with the second exam?
Yeah.
The makeup for the second exam, you're going to average with the second
If you took the second exam, yes.
Okay.
In other words,
the first exam, you're not.
Yeah, if you got like 90 on the first exam, right, and you got like 95 on the makeup exam, it averages out to, the best you could do is raise it another 5 points if you got 100 on it or something like that. But you could even lower it, I mean, but if you got 50 on a second exam, you got a good shot at raising your score, by doing the makeup. So I'm going to leave that up to your own judgment and stuff like that.
So what is the next week? I'm sorry, next week.
Next week, assignment 4B is due. By next week, what you plan on doing for your project, your description of your project, what data set you're going to use, and so on and so forth. I'll make sure that's posted after class. A place for you to put that. And then we'll have another homework on analysis of variance and chi-square. Okay, they'll be short. There may be 1 or 2 problems each homework. We don't have much time left this semester. Time's flying along here, right? Okay, any questions on that so far? I think when you actually see it on Blackboard, it'll make sense to you. But like I said, the last thing I'm going to do today is I'm going to go over kind of how I might approach choosing a project and doing it myself, so you can see what process I'm going through. Okay, good. So let's talk about analysis and variance, which is really our topic for next week, but I think we need to get a look at it now. Let me just make sure there's no comments on the chat box. Nope. Okay, good. Okay. And then, by the way, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over analysis of variance now. We're gonna break briefly. I'm gonna connect to an online lecture that Levi did last semester, that we worked on last semester. I'm gonna play that, right? So we'll get Levi's input on this, and then we'll take another short break, and then we'll come back and do a lab on the same material, chi-square, and then we'll finish up with this what we want to do with our project. Okay, so let me